from getting up out of your seat at the cafe and doing something? Or what other situations can you think of that are places where you might be sure that you're more better than the other guy, better off, smarter? What kind of trouble that can get you in? I've been there. I've got another story. Ready for another story? Okay. So
can I jump in for a second? If you just one little technical thing to see your pictures better, there's a way that if you click on Shokai's picture and the little dots and then you hit pin, it'll make Shokai big and you'll get like a little film strip of the rest of the participants, and then you can see his pictures a little bit bigger if you don't know that little tip already. Then we can see that.
I hope that helps somebody. So it gets a little flickery, but that's the way it is. I've got a little dirt path here leading into the trees. And you know, those dirt paths are just like the ones that the Buddha was walking on, I'm sure. Maybe not red dirt, but maybe. We've seen these footpaths elsewhere through paddy fields and things like that. Could be a Buddha's path. Walk into the shade of the trees back there and you see berries on the bushes. And well, okay, so it's not Buddha's path. Here comes a Datsun pickup with men in the back. And the driver stops, comes up comes up towards me. And he says, I know you, I know who you are. So now you have a son who is a priest. That catches me off guard. But who is this man here who knows who I am? And how can I suddenly have a son who is a priest? Well, this becomes true. Just as I hear the man say it, I figure I've been a week here with his family in Tanzania to celebrate the ordination of their son as a Jesuit priest. And this man out of the pickup and his workers, he works for the diocese and his workers are off picking the coffee beans and we have a chat. So he does know me as a person who's come a long way to be with his family as they celebrate their son's ordination. And I have been taken into this family as a member, albeit ignorant of many of the aspects of membership in this particular family, but maybe this is true in other areas of my life too. Maybe I'm also part of other families that I didn't realize before. Maybe these ancestors and Buddhas are really my relatives and they're all around me. There's another aspect to this story. As it goes on, there's a big feast to celebrate this. And the day after I had arrived, there was a meeting of many people in the family compound. And I was shown a booklet where the members of the community recorded and had done this for months, what they could contribute to the celebration. And the folks here that I see in the meeting appear to range from pretty well-to-do to pretty impoverished. And I was told, though, that nobody is left out. Do not be mean with dharma or wealth. Everybody contributes, is expected also to contribute. There seems to be no dwelling here of I versus you. At least for the duration of the feast, there may have been no dust seen upon this ground. It may have been no imperfections there. So it's a grand opportunity for not praising self, not holding a higher opinion of self than the other, than the one that's more shabbily dressed. or for me not to hold any difficult opinions about somebody in this group who seems aloof or skeptical, because here I am, kind of pretty obviously a rich guy, rich white guy, doesn't belong, although he does belong. He's been taken into the family. And it became clear to me at the time of departure, standing in that mud courtyard with our new priest and his father, and then his father pulls out the blueprint of the house they're building. He's building a house sort of as a rental, retirement income. And the iron gate was not yet ordered, and he needed money for this. And even as I'm mentally reaching for my wallet, right, the new priest, maybe he had his elbow in my hand, on my side. I don't think he used very many words, but he said, you know, every member of the family is expected to contribute. There I was, sure, of course. But I felt it was a wonderful feeling to discover I was a member of a family and had to be in the right place and the right time to find this out. These Buddhas and ancestors, they're all around us. Well, I think this Dharma is the enactment of the Bodhisattva vows. I think this Dharma doesn't exist until it's enacted with other people. It's like physical subatomic particles that don't exist until you look at them. And I don't think these Buddhas and ancestors are limited to what we think, because we know that all things, earth, trees, wooden posts, bricks, stones, and become Buddhas. So when you look over at those stones, they are as much part of the Dharma and the Buddha as those people that you thought you were separate from. And there we go. You want some more take on this? You want to make more comments? I see a lot of muted microphones there.
I could go on for a very long time listening to the stories.
Try me.
What was popping up for me was when you were talking is just how often, at least for me, even being around my colleagues, how there's a lot of comparison between, like if we have potlucks, we go to somebody's house for a social event, that many times when I walk into colleagues' homes and there's just a lot of that wealth, very different than when you walked into that room, and there was all the different levels, and it wasn't pointed out. Everybody had that even kind of, I guess, field of wealth and expectation. And there's just so many times that I've walked into colleagues' house and there's this self-judgment immediately, like I have to really stop myself and say, Kim, this isn't what it's about, but there is that instant recognition of, okay, we're all in the same field. How is it they live in these kind of mansions and I don't? And I do that kind of judging and have to step back and refocus on, well, that wasn't your priority. You had a lot of other priorities, but I have to do a lot of self-talk. So it kind of goes, instead of me judging them and not seeing that kind of equal field. When I was listening to you, I always come back to, okay, why is it I've got things breaking down and they've got this really nice place and we all can't come from the same place, you know? So that's what was jumping out at me with your story.
Mm-hmm. It's easy to see this as comparisons, but and I do want to come back to this offbeat idea I have that the Dharma doesn't exist until you have it in relationship to those Buddhas and ancestors, and those Buddhas and ancestors are not different from us, you.
I gotta say, Shokai, that just statement just kind of blew my mind. I've been sitting here just going, whoa, that's a really incredible insight. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you sharing that Dharma. And it makes me think today, I was kind of thinking about that, actually, not in those words, but I was thinking about the idea that we are the Dharma. I mean, we are a manifestation of the Dharma. And just kind of talking with my husband about this idea, and this little dog ran up and started barking at us. We were out on a walk. And normally I'm kind of afraid of yippy dogs and stuff. And so there's that separation. It's like, this dog is attacking me, kind of thing. But my husband was pointing out, oh yeah, see, that dog must be part sheepdog because it was trying to hurt us a certain way or something, like he was kind of, and I'm like, oh, and that's the manifestation of the Dharma. Like I just kind of had this idea that, oh, okay, that's the way the dog is manifesting, So I don't know. It's a really, really interesting insight. And I appreciate that.
Thanks.
I was going to add, Shokai, that I just love how you put that. And at Jukai, when you're given, one of the things that you're given is a Kechin-yaku, and the very end, there's a lineage chart at the very end. It says new ancestor, and then that is the preceptee's name. So we are. There's so many ways to view that, but one important way is that we are the next ancestor. We are the next in the line that carries this out, and it's just so sweet. I remember seeing that for the first time and being a little surprised to see my name underneath my teacher's name, and it's like, oh, so sweet.
Yeah, I know I hadn't seen that as ancestor. I saw that as student, the newbie, but I in line with what I was saying, though, yeah, I see that. I looked through Koju Kaiman for how the Dharma is worded in there. The contrite heart is open to the Dharma. Contrition brings freedom and immaculacy. Immaculacy is called the Dharma treasure. The Dharma is the medicine for all suffering. The truth, which is the Buddha treasure, the truth realized is called the Dharma treasure. That which appears in the world and in the scriptures becoming good for others is called the Dharma treasure. The Dharma of perfect enlightenment is never apart from the present moment. That's my favorite statement in the whole thing. There's the appellations given to the Dharma in each of the grave precepts: everlasting, unattainable, ungilded, inexplicable, intrinsically pure, flawless, equitable, genuine, all-pervading, the One. Capital O. There you go. How could anyone think that they possess enough of the Dharma in order to be tight-fisted with it and not share it. It's unattainable in words, hardly attainable in wordless thought. So intangible you can hardly grasp it for yourself, much less hold it in your grasp to share it with another. I'd say they have to see it for themselves in your own demeanor, in your own enactment of your own intentions. And I don't think you can fake that.
You know, one of the things when you were talking about being in that cafe, and then what you were just saying, how when you really think about how valuable the Dharma is, and then we worry about, why didn't I give that person a meal? Or me worrying about, why do these people have these gorgeous homes and I've got one that's falling apart? It really puts it in, you just have to, it's almost like the slap in the face going, what really is important? I have really loved your discussion tonight. It just validates, what, you know, what we work in our practice, what we are working for and towards in our practice, and just kind of reinforcing the clarity on what really is important in this journey. I really appreciated it tonight.
Thanks. It's easy to drop a stitch, I can tell you, but yeah.
Shokai, thank you for your beautiful Dharma talk, and I love the pictures too, and great stories. You know, another thing that comes to me about not being mean with the Dharma, sharing understanding, is like a friend of mine who was stressed out about current life on Earth a couple of weeks ago asked me, asked me about Buddhism. And honestly, I was pretty stressed out about life on Earth too. And I really wanted to just give her some book titles. You know, I kind of didn't feel like talking about Buddhism at that, I just didn't feel up to it. You know, it wasn't that I didn't think it was valuable or worth sharing. It's just that I felt like I wasn't going to be able to represent it well at that moment, you know. And
I can identify with that.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like the moment was calling for some great Dharma talk, which I didn't have access to. And so I don't really remember what I said, but it seems like those moments are when you really do need to think about that precept. Share whatever your understanding happens to be at that minute. I probably failed that moment. I don't really remember how it came out, but yeah,
I thinked out on that. I said I'm not going to use words. But I think I probably would if somebody challenged. I don't know what I would say if somebody said, okay, so tell me what it's about. Gee.
I know you wouldn't know until they did ask you the question.
Maybe.
Well, prepared speech wouldn't really be the right answer either. So
it might be a good idea to rehearse that.
25 words or less.
Yeah, I guess you could just bonk them on the head with your handy bamboo stick or something, but yeah.
I've got to say I enjoyed your talk, and particularly the reference to the ancestors. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
You can see my leaning in.
Yeah, I know. I could see you going, oh, and I'll move a bit closer. But there's sort of I always love synchronicity and when it's happening. And I sort of had really forgotten or hadn't really considered what you were talking about today until you got here, and until we got here about the ancestors. But yesterday I had to, I'm sort of doing, a third semester of a Sanskrit class. And, you've got to introduce your name in Sanskrit and then write a sentence in Sanskrit, and somebody had written in Sanskrit, samadhi is in the sound of the wind and the leaves, which I thought, oh, that's nice, poetic. But for some reason out of the blue, I was reminded that from a welcome to country ceremony in Australia, one of the things that happens now, and it celebrates Indigenous people who are Australian Indigenous people amongst some of the most oppressed people in the world, and have been treated so badly, and they've got really high imprisonment rates, and it's to do with racism and colonialisation and things like that. And like I've had to work with a lot of Aboriginal people over the years, and one of the things that happens is now, before any gathering, whether it was like a gathering like this, or if you go to a conference or something like that, they'll often have what they call a welcome to country ceremony. And so they'll have an Indigenous elder of that particular place. So because there are so many different Indigenous groups, so it'll be of that land, or if there's nobody from that land. So, and what they'll do is they'll welcome you to their country, or alternatively, you acknowledge the country that you're on if there's no one there to welcome you. And one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen was in Western Australia, where a man from south of Perth, a Noongar man, and he did a welcome to country, and often they'll do smoking and they'll burn eucalyptus leaves. And he said the most beautiful thing, and it was, welcome to our country. The ancestors are in the wind and are in the trees, and they welcome you. And it was just such a beautiful thing to say. And so I thought, I've got to say that in Sanskrit, like rather than saying, like samadhi is, the sound of the wind and the trees. I instead turned it around into the trees know the ancestors in the wind. And that's how I tried to write it anyway. And because in Sanskrit, to know is bodhi, as in bodhisattva, a knower of truth. And so I thought that was very nice. I don't know how I wrote it properly, but then it transpired. I saw that yesterday was World Indigenous Peoples Day. And I thought, wow, there's so much synchronicity going on. And then today you're talking about the same thing, and possibly it's really beautiful to be talking about ancestors and thinking about ancestors, but also when Indigenous people talk to you, and because their connection with the land is often a lot deeper than ours. And a lot of Indigenous people or Australian Aboriginal people, they'll say to you, here's my hand and here's my heart, when they meet you for the first time. And that's what reminds me of what you're saying in talking about how it's not just the ancestors going back into the deep past, but it's that welcoming you of your heart, and it's that sound that's there in the spirit, It's really a very beautiful thing. And I think that's the same in America too, some of there's been a lot of oppression of Native people in America, but, we went to Canyon de Chelly in Canyon de Chelly, and it's just magnificent. And the people were so welcoming, it was just wonderful. So anyway, that's my bit. Sorry. I'll mute myself now.
I was
So
listening.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for here's my hand and here's my heart.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I'm still a member of that family in Tanzania.
Yeah.
We're in touch.
How long ago was that, Shokai? I'm curious about both of those stories. How long ago those were?
10 years, maybe 7 to Tanzania. I don't do well on remembering dates. I could look it up,
Well,
but it
just
wasn't that long. It wasn't that long ago. And yeah,
Shokai, what do you make of one phrase, one verse, that is the 10,000 things in 100 grasses? Could you talk about that a little bit?
me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's those earth, trees, wooden posts, bricks, stones, and 1,000 grasses. The 10,000 things is you don't have to leave home. I didn't have to go to Tanzania to find this out. I would have found it out in some other place, maybe eventually, if I lived long enough to get the realization. That's sure the 10,000. And why grasses? Why not something else? Why not leaves?
And what about one phrase, one verse? I guess that's what I'm not, it's a little mysterious to me.
Is to me too, but if you think about it, it doesn't take much to tip you over into understanding the Dharma, even if it's only for a millisecond.
Lovely, thank you. That's great. Yeah, perfect.
One little impetus there.
Thank you. That makes sense.
And I'll just add that the 10,000 things and 100 grasses are kind of sometimes a traditional reference to the relative, but differentiated.
Traditional reference to the
Relative.
oh, I see, not the absolute.
The differentiated.
Yeah, I see, sure.
And it's also, as you said, Teiko, the wording is often mysterious and feels a little bit like a cop-out, but oftentimes it really is helpful to kind of take these on as a little bit of a koan. Like, what does that mean?
Well, I can say this, the Bodhidharma quotes are supposed to be more in the relative and the Dogen quotes in the absolute. I find the Dogen quotes easier to figure out.
So is the one phrase, one verse, is that the Bodhidharma part of it?
Yeah, I identify with that easier than all.
It's actually the Dogen. The second stanza is the Dogen.
Okay, the second stanza is Dogen. Okay. I get confused about that part, or I just forget. That's interesting that you say that. It kind of, when you said that the 10,000 things and 100 grasses refers to the relative, it sort of illuminated it for me a little bit. I kind of feel like one phrase, one verse could mean just, again, like, in the relative, each thing expresses the Dharma in their unique way, I guess. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you have your unique way of expressing the Dharma, so don't be mean with that. Express it your way.
It's kind of funny. I always forget, so there's part of the precept on the back of my Raksu, And it's really always interesting during the precept class that I always forget which one. And so I feel like they could all be there, but this is the one. I don't know if you can see that. Is it backwards?
One karma, one realization. Okay.
Anyway, just thought I
We could read that.
I'm all tangled up. Well, we have just maybe about 4 minutes left. Is there anything you want to say to wrap up, Shokai? Or any final questions or comments from folks?
I'm wrapped.
You're wrapped. Any
I'll
final
just say, like Monica, I'm still sort of so struck by the now I've forgotten exactly how you said it, but that the Dharma is only embodied when there's like a couple of us together doing it. Again, I'm still it kind of broke my brain for a second, and so I'm still kind of putting it back together, but it resonated deeply for me, for sure.
I think this seems like a theme that's woven through our discussions. I feel like this has come up in other classes where we've talked about how we are, I'm going to not say it quite how I mean, but we need the Dharma, and the Dharma needs us. The Dharma needs us to find its expression. So Dharma means a truth or the teaching of the truth, but it's also expression of Dharma in our lives. And so it's made visible, it's made manifest by us, by all of us, and our unique expression of it. So the Dharma
I hadn't been paying attention. I didn't realize that had come up before.
Or maybe it's just in my mind. It's come up in my mind, and I'm assuming you're all along with me on the ride.
Yeah.
I'll just remind folks about where we're headed for next week. And also thank you so much, Shokai. Thank you very much for the talk and discussion. It's lovely. And next week, we will finish with the 10 grave precepts, and Monica will be leading us in discussion on the precept on anger. And Kemyo will lead us in discussion on not defaming the 3 treasures. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to work on keeping these precepts as completely as possible, to engage them really wholeheartedly this week, especially, and also just to continue on with the practice of reading the Kyoju Kaimon sometime during the day, ideally earlier in the day, and then doing the reflection practice in the evening of pulling the events of the day through the mind, and just noticing points of contraction, expansion, just noticing sometimes those come together. And that's everything. And I'll say the closing first. Abiding in this ephemeral world, like a lotus in muddy water, the mind is pure and goes beyond. Thus we bow to Buddha. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all honored ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, maha prajna. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to attempt to unmute you all. I'm not really sure I know how to do that. But feel free to unmute yourself to say goodnight. And thanks again, everyone, for coming together for the class.
Night, Nick, Shirley.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shokai.
Thank you,
Dawn.
Shokai.
Shokai.
Thanks, Shokai.
Thank you,
Night.
Shokai. Bye-bye. Good night,
Thank you,
everyone.
Peter.
Aw, bye,
I'll
Bella.
share with you, Peter, later.
Ah.